The surface of the Calderon Reservoir was usually a dull sheet of slate at 5:30 in the morning, but that Tuesday it pulsed like the chest of something half submerged and breathing. I stood on the concrete catwalk with my sampling pole and watched as a single slow ripple spread toward the dam, rolled back from the wall, and met itself in the middle. The echoing splash sounded less like water and more like a heart valve snapping shut. 3 gulls wheeled above me, crying, then abruptly veered south, away from town, away from the muted orange sunrise. I dipped the pole, filled the sterile bottle, and tried not to think about how the ripples formed a perfect spiral before dissolving. It was early, I told myself. I hadn't finished my coffee. Waves do weird things at dawn. Still, as I labeled the bottle Mar 7, 05:34 a.m., I couldn't ignore the tug between my shoulder blades, that ancient animal instinct that whispers when something enormous has stirred beneath your feet. 2. I've worked 20 years for the Calderon Municipal Water Authority, most of them on the graveyard shift. You learn to trust your gut when you spend nights alone with heavy machinery and 60 billion gallons of rainwater. My father, foreman before me, used to say, "If the pumps cough, the city catches cold." I loved the poetry of that, loved the idea that Calderon's pipes were arteries and the reservoirs its lungs. Poetry had taken hold of the entire city lately. Galleries had sprouted in abandoned storefronts. Street corners hosted violinists even at midnight. The newspaper ran weekly profiles on the Calderon Canon, a ragtag cohort of painters and dancers and collage artists whose work shared an eerie coherence. Scenes of submerged cathedrals, spiral shells big enough to live in, serpents coiled around municipal buildings. No one could explain why they dreamed and drew the same shapes, but the public adored it. Tickets sold out. Property values soared. 3. That morning, after running turbidity and pH, I took the long way back to the lab. I wanted to peer over the safety railing at the reservoir's deepest cove, the old river valley we drowned 80 years ago when the dam was built. Fog clung to the surface. Beneath it, something vast exhaled and inhaled, contracting the water by inches. The motion was so languid you could mistake it for the wind, but there wasn't a leaf trembling on the oaks that tiered the hillside. No, the water was breathing of its own accord. My radio crackled. "Marta, you headed in? Budget hearing at 9. "Copy," I said to dispatch. "On my way." I turned from the reservoir, though I felt watched, the way you feel watched in a museum when a portrait's eyes follow you from the frame. IV. The hearing convened in City Hall's peeling auditorium. Our department director, Mr. Ashu, wore the pinch smile of someone about to surrender hostages. He presented spreadsheets that sweated red ink. Revenue down, arrears up, federal grants reduced. The remedy? Shut down 3 of 11 high-volume pumps, cut oxygenation cycles in half, postpone non-essential dredging. The water level will drop 2, maybe 3 meters, he assured the council, still within state guidelines. I imagined the reservoir's floor exposed like a peeled scab, the living thing beneath it, blinking at the sun for the first time in generations. My father's old field notes surfaced in my mind, scribbles about disturbances during the austerity measures of 1991, back when an engine failure forced a similar drawdown. Fish kills, stench, a minor earthquake no geologist could explain. Councilwoman Carranza thanked Mr. Shu, praised his courage to make tough choices, and called a vote. It passed, 5-2. V. Afterward, I walked uptown to clear my head and ended up at the Whitcomb Gallery, where my friend Xochi was installing her new show. 6 canvas panels leaned against the wall, each depicting the same serpentine creature in different stages of sleep. Coiled beneath city streets, curled around water mains, one golden eye cracked open. Xochi had never been to the reservoir, yet she'd painted the spiral ripples, the breathing water, the exact geometry I'd seen at dawn. "You like them?" She set down her staple gun, cheeks flushed with turpentine and pride. "How'd you think of this?" "Dream," she said. "I was floating in black water. Something the size of a stadium was napping underneath me, and its snore kept pushing me toward shore. When I woke, I had the entire series in my head. The temperature in the gallery felt suddenly tropical. I imagined an unseen tide pooling around my ankles, as though the reservoir were tipping its cargo of dreams into our waking world. "The city's cutting pump operations," I blurted. "Water levels dropping." Xochitl frowned. "Is that bad?" I pictured her Leviathan uncoiling, the city cracking like an eggshell. "It might be catastrophic," I said. 6. My father stored his logbooks in a cedar chest no one had opened since his funeral. That night, I pried it apart. Inside, bundled in oilcloth, lay 4 decades of maintenance records, but also sketches. Long, looping outlines of something whale-like, but wrong, ringed by spines instead of fins. Notes in the margins. May 17th, 1972, Artist Colony reports collective nightmare. Coincides with 1.5-meter drawdown. Avoids sonar. Agitates. It is dreaming us, not the other way around. The last entry, dated a year before he died, read, "Whatever we do, keep it asleep." 7. I couldn't keep the pumps running alone. There wasn't enough overtime in the world. But maybe I could keep the council from starving them of funds. The artists adored their muse. If they knew their inspiration risked waking in the flesh, they might throw their considerable new clout against the cuts. The next 2 weeks I haunted studios, coffee houses, theater lobbies, repeating my impossible story. Some laughed, some thought it marketing genius. But when the lakefront sculpture park began emitting a persistent subsonic hum, a new piece activated without the sculptor's involvement, skeptics dwindled. The hum matched the frequency of our aerators. 18 hertz, a pitch humans feel more than hear. The alleged fear frequency. The Leviathan's lullaby. Xochitl organized a rally on the courthouse steps. Hundreds showed, brandishing banners that merge municipal sloganeering with eldritch homage. "Keep Calderon creative. Let it dream." But Councilwoman Carranza dismissed them as bohemians drunk on grant money. "The pumps cost more in electricity each month than the library," she snapped. "Let's keep perspective." 8. I decided to seek perspective elsewhere. The oldest employee at the authority, Earl Whitaker, had retired to a trailer above the dam. Rumor said he never slept. Kept vigil with a floodlight aimed at the reservoir. When I knocked, he opened the door only a crack. "You're Delgado's girl," I nodded. I need to know what he believed lived out there. Not what, who. Earl's cataract blue eyes gleamed. "Your father called it the sleeper. Said it drifted up the old river, got penned behind the dam, generates psychic turbulence, like a propeller churns water. That turbulence leaks into town as ideas. Word got around, artists moved here, called it a renaissance." He tapped a yellowed envelope taped above the stove. A council memo, dated 1943, authorizing extreme caution in reservoir drawdown, possible structural anomaly present. He laughed. Structural anomaly, meaning big as a courthouse and full of teeth. "Can we keep it asleep?" "Sure. Stable depth, steady temp, constant aeration. Same things that keep fish healthy. Problem is, politicians never met a budget they couldn't chop." On July 1st, the cuts took effect. 3 pumps fell silent at midnight. The reservoir began to drop, slowly, but I felt every centimeter like a bead of sweat sliding down my spine. Seismometers registered faint tremors. Downtown, a mural spontaneously changed color overnight, its reds blanching to the white of underpainting. At 4 a.m., I walked the dam's parapet. Stars shivered in the black water. Then the reflection fractured, a massive shape drifting just beneath the surface, pale and dappled like moonlight filtered through leaves. A single eye, lidless and gold, opened long enough to regard me. The resulting wave slapped the concrete so hard it drenched my boots. X. If we couldn't restore funding, maybe we could fake it. Pump number 3, though officially offline, could be jump-started with spare bearings and a bypass cable. I requisitioned parts from an outlying station, forged signatures, and spent 2 nights alone in the pump gallery, greasing shafts, rewiring panels. When I threw the knife switch, the old beast groaned alive, adding a fresh baritone to the mechanical choir. The water level stabilized, but secrecy didn't. Surveillance flagged the power spike. Mr. Hashu summoned me. "You falsified work orders," he said, not unkindly. "I ought to fire you. If those pumps quit, something under the reservoir will wake," I said. "It was your pumps that sang it to sleep in the first place. They're part of its cradle now." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Earl used to say the same. Hard man to ignore, but legend doesn't balance a spreadsheet." Outside his window, wind shook the flagpoles. Except there was no wind, only the water's breath rolling up the valley. The flagpoles clanged, hollow and mournful. Exin. That evening, the city hosted its annual River Lights Festival. Thousands lined the channel to watch paper lanterns drift toward the sea. Xochi debuted a projection mapped onto the courthouse facade, rippling fish, swirling shells, phosphorescent serpents. Mid-show, the images warped. The courthouse appeared to liquefy, bricks undulating as if underwater. Spectators screamed, some fell to their knees, seasick on dry land. Emergency crews blamed a bad generator. I knew better. The sleeper was stirring, extending its dream space into ours, warping matter like a child kneading clay. Councilwoman Carranza phoned Mr. Asu that night, voice shaking. "Turn the pumps back on, all of them," she ordered. "Whatever overtime, whatever fuel surcharge, just do it." Shu relayed the directive with a weary smile. "Congratulations, Marta. Your monster bought us a line item. Sane." The victory came too late to prevent the lowest water level in decades. The sleeper's dorsal ridges now protruded like a chain of tiny islands near the South Cove, mistaken by boaters for debris. Fish congregated there, drawn by heat that shimmered around the protrusions. And the creature kept half waking. Streetlights pulsed with its heartbeat. Sculptures sagged like wax under a hidden sun. We needed more than funding. We needed to apologize. Earl said apology for the sleeper was vibration. A song sweet and familiar enough to lull it again. Pumps helped, but they were industrial lullabies, rhythms, not melodies. We required a chorus, so we took art to the reservoir. Third. On the new moon, 36 musicians, painters, dancers, poets, Calderon's entire renaissance, gathered on floating platforms moored just off the dam. City electricians rigged the stage lights. The ferry authority provided barges for percussionists whose instruments were repurposed water tanks, each tuned to a resonant frequency calculated by acoustic engineers from the university. At midnight, with the pumps thudding in the concrete throat beneath us, the artists began. Low cellos mirrored the pump's drone. Brass answered, dipping and rising like the reservoir's breath. Drummers struck the water tanks, sending ripples that overlapped and formed concentric circles. Circles that mirrored the spiral I'd seen weeks earlier. Painters flung luminescent pigment across black canvases. Each splash sparked under ultraviolet strobes. Constellations on wet velvet. Dancers on paddleboards carved arcs so slow it hurt to watch, imitating the creature's silken undulations. I stood in the control room, hand on the throttle for Pump Whisper 3, and felt the music through steel grating. My bones vibrated. Beyond the glass, the reservoir's surface stilled. No ripple, no breath, only perfect mirror. Then something enormous rolled just beneath the platforms, turning its blind side to the night air. A mountain's worth of flesh surfaced without a sound. Artists froze, instruments lifted like offerings. The sleeper's skin was translucent, shot with veins of opal light. And on it, I read murals that had not yet been painted, scores not yet composed, its dreams embodied. I throttled the pump gently, timing its thrum to the cellos. The creature exhaled, a sigh that gusted across the water, ruffling hair, bending easels. Painters adjusted their strokes to match the sigh's cadence. Music softened, slowed, until every note was the space between heartbeats. Bit by bit, the opal veins dimmed. The water swallowed the sleeper. For the first time in weeks, I could not detect its shape beneath the surface. We kept playing until dawn. Ordinances against amplified sound after midnight went unmentioned. The council stood on the dam in pajamas and overcoats, hands clasped as though in prayer. When the sun finally edged above the hills, mist curled off the water like steam from a teacup, dissolving the last hint of the Leviathan. Epilogue. The pumps run full tilt now, their budget secured for a decade, renewable. Earl came out of retirement to oversee a new post, Reservoir Steward, a job he swears was invented for him, though the charter bears my handwriting. I monitor oxygenation charts, train recruits to listen for off-rhythm pulses, and attend the artists' monthly dream concerts that double as performance art and hydrological maintenance. City Hall claims credit for the groundbreaking collaboration between infrastructure and culture. That's fine. Let them plan symposiums. They don't need to know every detail, that we tune the concerts to 18 hertz minus a hair, that Xochi's mural movement corresponds to hypnogram readings we take with hydrophones, that I still visit the catwalk at dawn and watch for spirals. Because the sleeper is not gone. It never will be. It dreams beneath the valley, fathoms down, shaping every song, every sketch, every poem Calderon produces. I like to think it dreams of us kindly, that our tiny lights please the dark behind its lids. But kindness is a human word, and the sleeper is older than words. It is the deep grammar of the world, the sentence beneath every language. All we can do, all I can do, is keep the cradle rocking, keep the pumps breathing, keep the city dreaming while the Leviathan sleeps. The art will flow, the water will hum, and in that humming, we'll hear the slow, contented heartbeat of what lies below. Not quite mercy, not quite menace, but something vast enough to contain both. When the ripple completes its long circuit around the reservoir, lapping at stone as gentle as a mother's hush, I whisper back, "Sleep, old one. We are listening."